Growing up as a know-it-all Disney fan, one of my biggest pet peeves was when people would accidentally call Anastasia a Disney princess. And one of my favorite things to do was smugly correct them by telling them that not only is she not a Disney princess, she wasn't even made by Disney. I was annoying like that as a little kid. Something happened last year, however, that made those people ever so slightly correct. But I'm here to stop them from thinking that they can tell me I told you so, because despite what happened, Anastasia is still not and will never be an official Disney princess. So what happened?
It shows the entrance to 20th Century Fox movie studios. Now check out the fine print. A division of Walt Disney Company.
In March 2019, Disney acquired 21st Century Fox, including the animation studio that produced the movie. Other properties acquired include X-Men and The Simpsons, and if you have Disney Plus, you may have noticed that both of these IPs are now featured on the streaming service. So, where is Anastasia? Why is she missing from the platform? Her origin story may give us some clues as to how Disney feels about the beloved Russian princess.
So, are you ready to become the Grand Duchess Anastasia?
No. What?
You've probably already seen this movie, but if you haven't, Anastasia is about a Russian orphan named Anya, who is on a journey to find out where she really came from. And on her way, she befriends a couple of con artists named Vlad and Dmitri. This is set after the Russian royal family is assassinated, and one of the surviving royals is looking for her granddaughter, Anastasia, who is rumored to have survived the attack. Vlad and Dmitri devise a plan to receive the reward if she's found, and decide to convince Anya that she is the missing princess. Along the way, we find out that Anya really is Anastasia, and she's reunited with her grandmother. And she also gets her prince at the end, who, by the way, is one of the most attractively drawn cartoon men. Seriously, if this actually was a Disney movie, he would be right up there with Naveen. There's also an evil Rasputin out to kill the last Romanov, which just so happens to be Anastasia, but don't worry, our heroes save the day at the end. That sounds a lot like a Disney movie, doesn't it? And that might have been done on purpose. See, the two men behind this movie are Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, who just so happen to have worked for the mouse themselves in the 1970s. Don felt as though the quality of the animation studio was dwindling and decided that they wanted to restore animation to what it had been in the golden age. After Walt was gone, the studio cut a lot of corners in order to battle rising costs of making animated movies. So Don and Gary did something that kind of left a bitter taste in Disney's mouth. They left with about 14 of their animators, the Disney defectors as some would call it. After that, their team would continue to make hit after hit, such as American Tail and All Dogs Go to Heaven. This created direct competition for the Disney studio. Sometimes they would release their movies at the exact same time as Disney, and for a while, they were winning. This was a pretty big deal at the time for the remaining Disney animators and the studio. In a documentary called Waking Sleeping Beauty, there's a segment where we see exactly what the animators left behind felt about Don and his team, and it wasn't pretty.
The bombshell set back the release of The Fox and the Hound by 6 months, and left Miller and the studio betrayed.
Part of me wonders if there's still some resentment there to this day. After all, he was a direct competitor that came out of their own family of animators and probably embarrassed the company a little bit. Unfortunately for Don and Gary, Anastasia was one of the last hits for them moving forward. By this time, Disney had made their stride and entered the Disney Renaissance, pretty much blowing everyone competing out of the water. But now that Anastasia technically belongs to Disney, will she get any recognition as a princess? Oddly enough, if you search for Don's movies on Disney Plus, he's not completely neglected, but you only get 2 of his lesser known films. And don't get me wrong, I love Thumbelina, but it didn't quite make the splash that Anastasia did. And with the company's history with Don, it's a little fishy that it's not there. It's possible that they don't want one of their more intimate competitors to have one of his more popular films on their service, or it could be a possible way to avoid confusion, since Anastasia so closely resembles one of their own franchises. I love a good conspiracy, so my theory is that Disney doesn't want to give Don the props, but it seems a little too petty to be possible, and why lose possible profit over something like that? If eventually she does make her way to the platform, that still won't automatically enlist her in the lineup. It's actually a pretty hard group to get into. It's easy to assume that the Disney Princess lineup is just a compilation of all of the cartoon heroines that Disney has created, but it's a pretty meticulous list with rules for entry. In the early 2000s, the then chairman of Disney's Consumer Products officially created the franchise in order to have a cohesive image to sell merchandise. At the time, it included Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora, Ariel, Belle, Jasmine, Mulan, Pocahontas, Esmeralda, and Tinkerbell. And even though some of them weren't princesses, they were still chosen because they still fit what Disney executives called the princess mythology, which I think just stood for, she's not technically a princess, but she counts. The lineup did change over the years though. We lost some faces, some were relocated into their own franchises, and some never even made it on. Fun fact, for now, Anna and Elsa aren't technically princesses. They are so popular, Disney gave them their own individual franchise. Disney is pretty picky about who ends up where, like Jane and Giselle, who almost made it on, but never quite got past that finish line. There's a process to get on that list, and even though it seems vague to us, Disney seems to know who does and doesn't belong there. There has also never been a non-Disney created princess on their list, other than Pixar's Merida. The company also seems to add a new princess within the first few years after their movie's been released, and being a movie that is over 20 years old, it may be a bit late for Anastasia anyway. Whether Disney will allow a non-Disney/Pixar character on their lineup is unknown, but adding one whose creation is tied to someone who has such a bad history with Disney is pretty unlikely, and we probably won't be seeing any kind of presence in the parks the way we do with the rest of the group. Anastasia may belong to Disney now, but she will always be Don and Gary's princess. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. If you want to see more stuff like this, don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And if you want to be notified when I make a video, you can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button. I also have a Twitter in case you want to follow what I'm up to in between videos. That'll be listed below. I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.